Hi everyone, welcome back to the garden, where after a short break it's March already. How did that happen? It's just come round so fast. I don't know about you, but spring is definitely in the air here. There's buds on the hedgerows, the trees are full of birds, the plants are starting to grow. Ice days, sub-zero nights, just a distant memory. Okay, that last bit's a bit of a lie, because this next week we've got yet another cold blast. Nighttime temperatures down to around -5 or so. This winter has certainly dragged out. And I don't know about you, but here unfortunately I've lost a lot of plants. Nothing truly hardy, but certainly a lot of younger plants, and a lot of those plants are definitely on the experimental end of the spectrum. It's a sad time of the year, but at least now we can say we're slowly heading out the other side of it and we can start looking forward to this summer. But today, just before I wrap up a load of my plants yet again, I want to show you a few feather palms in the garden here. Yes, I know, another palm video. But today I want to show you 3 of the most popular varieties that you can buy here in the UK and give you an idea about their hardiness in real life terms, how they've reacted to the temperatures here. We saw around -7, but as you know, that temperature alone doesn't tell the full story. The big issue this year was how quick the cold came. We had a very mild autumn that dragged out, and then suddenly bang, really cold. Sustained durations of cold, they cause real damage for plants. And I want to show you 3 plants today that have certainly reacted to it a little bit differently. On my way over, I just wanted to show you these skeletal messes on the floor. These are unfortunately what's left of the Echiums that I was growing here. It was just too cold for too long in December for them, and it's a bit gutting really. Not because the plants I've lovingly nurtured for years, but because the plants with so much promise. This one here on the left, it's almost tree-like in its proportions, and it would have been a real stunner this spring. I don't know if you can see in there, but it actually had originally around 15 growing points. It really looked stunning last summer, but then that heat wave knocked a few of them out. The rest of the plant though battled on. It looked great until December. But unfortunately, plants like these, they definitely have a very fine tolerance between life and death, and a cold winter is just too much for them up here. But from these plants that are definitely destined for the compost heap to one that I hope has a bit of a brighter future. This is my Phoenix canariensis, the Canary Island date palm. Fast growing, evergreen, lush green colour. Unfortunately at the minute, that last term doesn't really apply. And as you can see, most of the leaves are a straw brown colour. But unfortunately, that's the effects of deep cold on these plants. Yes, they're widely available, yes, they grow fast, but unfortunately they're not the hardiest of palms, and this is what happens to them in a cold winter. Now, you might be wondering, did I protect these plants? Yes, I did. I used frost protection fleece, a couple layers of the thicker stuff, and I put it over the top. But unfortunately, whilst that can help to actually keep the frost off plants, it can raise the temperatures up by a degree or so around the base of the plant. It can't work miracles, and it doesn't actually provide heat itself. So eventually, with the duration of the cold that we had, if it's -6, -7 outside the fleece, it will get close to those temperatures inside it. And those temperatures are just too much for the actual leaves themselves. Now, it's not all bad news, and if you look further down, you will see plenty of green growth there, so I am optimistic that this plant will bounce back. So I guess ultimately, you need to be aware of your location in the country, what kind of temperatures you usually see, and I will probably use this winter as a sort of barometer as to whether it's worth growing these. If you're coastal, if you live near a city centre, if you're in the south part of the country, then you might have a better chance than me. If you're further north and live in a place that's even colder, if you've seen temperatures closer to -10, then realistically, a Phoenix is going to struggle to survive that. In my experience, Phoenix palms, they only really have a narrow band between damage and death, and it can be the difference between -7 and -9, so I've probably been quite lucky for this one to make it through to another year here. But if you live somewhere colder, realistically, I'd probably steer clear and go with palms like Camarops or Shamrops down there, Trachycarpus. Those are the real hardy evergreens that hopefully, again in most of the country, will keep a tropical vibe going despite these cold temperatures. But chances are, if you're watching my videos, you won't just be going to your local bargain supermarket to choose from their selection of palms. You'll enjoy growing the unusual, going to specialists, trying plants that most people have never even heard of. And if you want a feather palm with that bit of extra hardiness, then a Butia is that next level up. And this winter perfectly fits in with my understanding of the hardiness. This one over here is a Butia eriospatha or eriospatha, I've heard it pronounced both ways. I do also grow odorata in the garden, and the story is pretty consistent between them. They're tougher than the Phoenix canariensis. I was a bit reluctant to say that before this year because these are palms that I've actually lost. I lost a small odorata at around -6 2 years ago, but again there was quite a duration of cold and it was a younger plant. But this year I'm pleased to say, with just a bit of fleece over the top, this Butia has come through with only the smallest bit of browning to the new leaves. And I think it's to be expected after this autumn when everything was growing so fast. I think last year really was a perfect storm of ingredients leading to plant damage. For a start, we had that real heat wave when it was so hot that a lot of plants just couldn't grow and there wasn't the moisture there for the ones that wanted to grow. Then autumn came, bringing a bit of relief from those temperatures, a bit more water, and the plants suddenly got growing. Everything's burst into life, the leaves, the stems full of water, and then bang, winter came and cut everything back. So on plants like this, which are hard enough to get through the temperatures that we saw, there is still going to be a bit of nipping at the new growth, just a bit of browning around the edges, because this plant was pretty much an active growth before winter came. That being said, this plant still looks fantastic. Overall, it's very green, and I'm looking forward to see it really grow and build on last year's growth this summer. So it's very clear then that my own experience here backs up the hardiness claims you see online. Phoenix canariensis is nowhere near as tough as the Butia varieties we can grow here, but definitely have the extra edge in hardiness. So if you live in the very coldest parts of the country, well, if you live in the very coldest parts, I wouldn't recommend feather palms as a group of plants. They're just simply not strong enough to take a real cold winter. But if you live somewhere where you see -7s, -8s, potentially -9s, and you are willing to protect the plant, then a Butia is definitely a better investment than a Phoenix canariensis. Because a lot of the time these feather palms, they can get big, and a Phoenix will soon get big enough where you can't even protect it. And at that point you are going to have to leave that plant to fend for itself. And a Butia, particularly a larger plant, has definitely got a lot better chance than a Phoenix canariensis. So yes, protect them while they're small. And the other thing that you can do to improve the hardness of these plants is to give them the best spot in your garden. Raise them up, give them a sunny spot, give them nice well-drained soil. Personally here, I like planting into banks and raised areas of the garden just to give the roots that extra bit of dryness in winter. But whatever you do, wherever you grow this plant, it should hopefully look greener for more of the year than the Phoenix. But in a winter that's cut phormiums back and killed cordylines, there is a feather palm that looks pristine, and it's none other than Jubaea Chilensis, the Chilean wine palm. As you'll probably know by now, this is my favourite cold hardy palm, and it's certainly a beauty even after the cold we've had. This plant here is at the more exposed end of my garden, and it doesn't get any protection. No frost fleece, nothing like that. Well, certainly not the temperatures that we had this winter, and it looks perfect. Okay, if I was being pedantic, there's a little bit of browning up the side of a new spear, but I'm sure as that leaf continues to open, you won't even notice it. So ultimately, if you want a really tough feather palm, if you want something that can survive without protection during the winters like we just had, and looks good in the spring following it, then Jubaea Chilensis is the one to go for. Now unfortunately, like everything, it's a series of compromises, and this is a plant that grows substantially slower than Phoenix canariensis, and they're also a good bit more expensive. So what I'd say is, as well as choosing the right spot to plant it, before you buy large mature versions of either this one or the Butia, definitely do your research and make sure that it can actually survive where you are. It's well worth joining the Facebook groups, the tropical style gardening groups, and also checking out the Growing on the Edge forum and see other people's real life experiences. Because if you're going to spend a lot of money, particularly buying a more established specimen that'll be tougher and hardier, you want to know that it's perfectly tough and hardy for the winters like the one we've just had. Yes, I really do hope we don't see another 2010 style winter with temperatures that can wipe out most exotics, but winters like last year are going to be more likely, I think, as we go forward. We are going to see these sudden cold snaps, and they're probably going to follow years of definitely unbalanced growing conditions. So personally, I think if you're going to grow a feather palm, it's well worth spending the extra money. Choose a Butia or choose a Jubaea, a plant that can not only survive the cold but also look the best after it as well. Today's video is just a quick one then, because I need to get wrapping up some plants before it gets dark, but I just wanted to show you a bit of an assessment of the winter damage so far on 3 of the feather palms that grow here, and hopefully it provides some value if you're looking to plant and grow one of these in your garden this year. Yes, the Phoenix canariensis is cheap, yes they grow quickly, but they're only really a viable option if you live somewhere sheltered, or at least you're optimistic enough to hope that we get a string of milder winters leading into the future. If you live somewhere colder, the Butia is definitely a tougher choice, but it's certainly a plant with its limits, and anyone who promises that it can take -10, -11, I think that's only a brief dip to those temperatures, and I'm pretty sure if things got much lower than -8, -9 here, that plant would be taking some damage. But still, it's a better long-term choice if you live somewhere that sees a bit more cold than average here in the UK. But then the Jubaea Chilensis, no surprises there, those palms really are tough, and it would truly take a 2010 style winter with double digits below zero to really cause me some worry about that plant. But that is offset by the fact they're actually really expensive and they grow incredibly slowly. But these 3 feather palms, I personally, when I plant some plants in the garden, I want it to be a feature for years to come. And that can mean taking a bit of a gamble on the Phoenix, or in the case of the Jubaea, waiting for it. So ultimately, there isn't a right answer or a wrong answer. All 3 are fantastic palms. But I would just say, plant one with the knowledge that it'll hopefully survive and give you lots of joy for years to come in your garden. Plant it knowing that if it does need protection, you can give it that protection, and when you do plant it, give it the best spot possible and do everything you can. Raise the palm up, improve the drainage under it, make sure that the grass isn't growing right up to the base of it, reduce the competition in the area around it, and you should hopefully have a strong, healthy palm that'll be a real feature in your garden for years to come. If you've got any comments about these plants or you'd like to share your experiences with them, then leave me a comment in the section below. And for those of you who are wondering about the other feather palms in my garden, my Jubutia, which is a Jubaea Butia hybrid, that looks pristine as well. So I am hopeful that it's equally as hardy or nearly as hardy as the Jubaea itself. And then the Chamaedorea, that tiny little feather palm growing in a shady little spot in my garden, that actually surprisingly looks pristine too. Which I actually thought -7 was right on the edge for it, but just having that really sheltered spot tucked in against my brick shed seems to have helped it out this winter. So overall, yes, these feather palms look quite good considering. They could have taken more damage, and I'm really pleased that they've actually pulled through. There's some plants in the garden that don't look great right now, but like I said earlier in the video, spring is definitely on the way, and I will be having more planting and garden design videos coming up soon, and hopefully more regular videos starting next week. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later.